We asked 100 married women. Some days I'd be willing to trade my man for a really good what?
Pool boy.
A good what?
I'm sorry.
What did you just say? No.
I was just playing.
Right here.
I was just playing.
Yeah, but what did you say, though?
So in the process of doing my due diligence for this case study, I found out that apparently it's fake news. Steve Harvey's wife did not cheat on him, and all these rumors were made up by a disgruntled employee, I imagine. A couple of minutes ago, he posted different things kind of celebrating his wife, so kind of to put the rumors to rest. But I do still think it's worth a conversation. I think there's still elements worth exploring, and I'm going to attempt to do that throughout this case study. So please watch it till the end and comment your thoughts down below. So basically, the rumor was that Steve Harvey's current wife cheated on him with a bodyguard that apparently he grew up with. And, you know, a lot of men kind of felt that sense of I told you so. Number one, for the fact that Steve Harvey in a lot of ways has been a supporter of women in a way that men didn't find equity in, right? So similar to Derrick Jackson, his position has tended to be that if things go right, it's because you have a good woman. If things go wrong, it's because you're not a good enough man. And obviously that's problematic. Obviously a lot of men had an issue with it. And that's why when this supposed news came out, we were so enthusiastic about pointing out all the reasons why, of course, this is what was going to happen. But I think the first thing I would say is this spectacle is an indictment on our appetite. And I've been talking about this for a while. The appetite for media right now is one of dysfunction, one of car crashes. And I wouldn't be surprised if because of that, celebrities took it upon themselves to manufacture car crashes because they know that's what's going to get views, that's what's going to get eyes, right? Recently, we saw that Keke Palmer and her child's father reconciled, which might not actually have been a reconciliation because the entire thing might have just been a publicity stunt. But because we have such an appetite for nonsense, for reality show content, I think we're only going to keep going that way. And I think this Steve Harvey situation, whether or not it's actually true, is a testament to that. Because there is also a chance that it is true, but this is part of their PR effort to quail the traction because maybe they decided to amicably resolve whatever it is that happened. Or maybe it's just complete bullshit.
That's mine right there. Yeah, I own you and you own me. I will kill everybody in here about your ass. Okay. You understand that about the way I love you, Marjorie Elaine.
She cheated on him. She cheated on him. And you know who she cheated with? A bodyguard. A guard. What like? Brother, for this life, fear women. Fear women. Use 22 hours to fear women in a day. And the remaining 2 hours, use it to fear or does not fear women. Only God knows the conversation that snake had with Eve in the Garden of Eden. Up till today, till the day we are able to figure out that conversation. That's the day we start understanding women. Women.
But I think this is a great opportunity for us to talk about male pessimism. I tell women often that, you know, because men's responsibility naturally and traditionally and societally is to provide and protect, it makes us naturally pessimistic. It makes us naturally default to worst case scenario and prioritize figuring out everything that could potentially go wrong and coming up with a contingency plan to handle that. To the untrained eye or to the unaware, it could look like pessimism. It could look like men hate fairy tales. Men don't like love. Men are unromantic. But I would submit that a consequence of our responsibility as men is that pessimism, is that sometimes it looks like nihilism. It's a sense of she's a hoe until proven otherwise, or she's a bad woman, or this is a bad situation until proven otherwise. Whereas I think women are allowed to, and even now celebrated for being optimistic, for being pie in the sky, for being fantastical in their assumptions of life and reality. And sometimes it gets them into trouble. But I think it's important that we begin to empathize with that aspect of men's disposition. With that being said, a lot of us as men, we focus on sustainability, right? And that's why when we see these celebrity relationships, we're not really a fan of them. We're like, it's burning bright and it's shiny, but typically with things like that, they don't last, right? I've even said I don't think Ciara and Russell Wilson's relationship is sustainable based on some of her actions, right? A couple months ago, maybe even a year ago, she came outside damn near butt naked in a sheer outfit. And she's a wife of a man who claims to be a Christian, claims to be conservative, is conservative in a lot of his presentation and disposition. So how sustainable is it to, have a relationship with somebody who is an entertainer in their profession and also in their disposition, and somebody who's more background? We've seen attempts from Russell Wilson trying to assimilate to her lifestyle, trying to dance badly on camera or trying to, play the part of the type of man that would naturally mesh with the type of woman that Ciara presents herself as. So I think that's part of the reason why men tend to see these things and we're like, man, it's some bullshit.
What you've done for me is you allowed me to stop existing and to start living. I never lived. Before I met you.
Part of the depiction we see on TV, in movies, of romantic relationships between men and women is one that insinuates that he is lucky to have her, while simultaneously assuming that she could have done better, right? So it's a one-sided admiration, right? She's his better half. She's the best thing that's ever happened to him, and he's just some guy. That's my issue with like movements like Me and Somebody's Son. I think to categorize, classify a man as just somebody's son, I think is dismissive and I think it's reductive. But these are kind of the common paradigms that we celebrate. And I think that's why we have such a proliferation of simps, right? Men who believe that their role as a man is simply to worship women. And it makes it difficult to progress some of these conversations because while we are attempting to tell women the truth, paint a large picture, and talk about issues that are going to negatively affect the women, there are janitors around, men who are ready, willing, and enthusiastic about cleaning up a woman's mess, not even helping her clean up her mess, but cleaning up her mess, and also taking pride in his ability to scrub. Oftentimes, those men present themselves as like superior men. Their ability to attract, navigate problematic women, tame problematic women. But the reality is a lot of times those men came from situations where problematic women were their norm. Maybe their mom was a problematic woman, right? And they don't even know to expect better from women. They don't even know that it's possible for a woman to be reasonable, to be considerate, to not be solipsistic. And oftentimes these men lack riz. They aren't familiar with getting women, navigating the mental gymnastics and the mental maze that is femininity in reference to masculinity. So they just settle for, if things go wrong, it's my fault. If things go right, it's because of her. And again, it's not sustainable. If a woman is willing to, enthusiastic about disrespecting or disregarding you in public, brother, she's not for you. And we need to start drawing hard lines in the sand if we want some of this behavior that is not sustainable, whether for ourselves or our sons or our daughters. If we want these things to stop, we have to be willing to change ourselves. And that means this sadomasochistic urge that we have to take on difficult women as some Boy Scout badge needs to stop.
Before she got married to Steve Harvey, we talked. And she told me, she said, Jimmy, Jimmy, you know what, Steve, he's so much like my dad, you know.
You know, oftentimes we criticize women for, they want Pookie and Ray Ray and they want projects. But we do the exact same thing, but our version is taking on difficult women. Our version is taking on a woman that don't really like you like that, but you grade yourself on your ability to convince her to. Taking on women that you're not her first choice. You're barely her third choice. But you figure if one day I can convince her to fall in love with me, just like the movies tell me to, that I must be the shit. And it's our job as a man to ... And once we ... she will naturally ... Brothers, it's not true. While you are ... dotting, you need to figure out, first of all, you need to figure out yourself and what you deserve, and you need to stop settling for less and assuming female benevolence. Women are people. They're not goddesses. They're people. As flawed, as contradictory, and as complex as we are as people, women and men are people. Celebrity relationships are such a bad example, in my opinion, for modeling real-world, actual relationships. I heard a quote that the grass is only greener on the other side because it's astroturf. Like, it stays green because it's not real grass. But because we live in this social media generation where we think people's highlight reels are their life, we fall for the bullshit. Comparison is the thief of joy. You're so busy looking at Steve Harvey's relationship, what it is, what it ain't, that you're unable to look at yourself and look at your relationship and consider if it works in real life. Same goes for women. You look at goals as going on vacation once a month and riding in fancy cars and living in luxury and making people jealous on social media, not considering if that's sustainable. Not thinking about taxes, not thinking about maintenance, but we've been socialized to idealize these fairy tale-ish situations when in reality they're not. They just look good. And I think this is one of the big lessons for us. For the young boys, I would say that despite the fact that this Steve Harvey divorce story is apparently a hoax, it's important, and women might not like this, but it's important that you check a woman's Carfax. You need to understand what her patterns are. You need to have conversations about the decisions that she made in the past and her disposition towards those decisions now. If she is unapologetic, unashamed, solipsistic in her disposition, that's a woman you don't need to deal with. And that's not to say that if a woman has made mistakes in her past that she is bad or she is not worth love, but it's to say that you need to be aware of everything you're going into. If you're buying a car, you need to have the Carfax. Does this car have water damage? Has it been in a wreck? Was it totaled? So even if you decide to still buy the car, you're not going in blind. You're not unaware if a bill comes up after the first 500 miles that it needs a new engine. You're not surprised. Maybe during that time you've been saving up money to buy one. Or it was just a beater that you were going to drive in the meantime before you were able to buy the car that you actually like. But to go into these things naive and then later on come on social media or come on YouTube or come on under my comments and tell sob stories about how this woman wasn't shit and she broke your heart or she cheated on you with your friend and this and that, but you never did your due diligence to find out the caliber of women you were dealing with, it's very hard for me to feel sorry for you. And I say the same exact thing to women. But as men, we act as if we don't have some of those same proclivities and some of those same reflexes. And we don't have some of those same blind spots as we critique women for having. Your dick ain't gonna change her. Your money is not gonna change her. Your disposition is not gonna change her. The only thing that could change her is herself and God. So as a man, you need to submit yourself to whatever it is that she wants to be. And not just what she says, but what she's doing. And you need to also do your due diligence. Ask around about her. How is she thought of in the community? See, these things don't just go for men, they go for women as well. Because I know, the fairy tale feminine thinking would tell you that women and people in general can change and will change and are likely to change. But the reality is those are the exceptions, not the rule. And as men, being that your job is to provide and protect, it means that your job is to anticipate problems and prepare yourself with solution. And that goes for the type of people, friends, family, otherwise, that you decide to tether yourself to. Because unlike women, when things go bad and you want to complain about it, nobody gives a shit. And I definitely don't give a shit if there are obvious places and obvious signs that you should have been aware of prior to getting her pregnant, marrying her. We need to learn to chew the meat and spit out the bones. People are looking for prophets who are supposed to be benevolent, and their words are supposed to be gospel. I even get nervous when people look at me that way, because a lot of these things, I have some things figured out, but other things I'm still working on figuring out. I'm building this proverbial plane and flying it at the same time. I know a bunch of men didn't Think Like a Man, Steve Harvey's book, quote unquote, exposing the nature of men and the best way that women can navigate said nature and checkmate men. And men were saying, this is bullshit, especially coming from Steve Harvey being married, I think 3 or 4 times, and now being married to the former girlfriend of a drug dealer who served 25 years in prison, who, by the way, is now coming out with a book, who, by the way, was married when Steve's current wife and him were in romantic communication. Eventually went to prison on a drug charge that he supposedly took on to protect Steve's current wife. Now, brothers, these things matter. And also, Steve, as much as, he might have some wisdom, brother's been married a bunch of times. So to take what he says as face value as gospel for how you sustain a long-term marriage is not necessarily intelligent. But again, we pedestalize celebrities and we pedestalize people who have the gift of gab without having any sense of analysis or consideration if their lives are consistent with what they say. And I hope very much that Steve has found forever in his wife. However, I think the bigger lesson is we got to stop modeling our lives and ourselves after celebrities and comparing ourselves and allowing these very peculiar people to disseminate gospel that's supposed to be effective for common people. Ladies, thinking like a man is not how you get a man. It's how you get one to sleep with you. But for that sustained, long-term love and protection and family that you might be looking for, it's more complex than that. And a better book would be Talk to a Man. Listen to men, not think like men. Even with these conversations and part of my critique of the manosphere, the point is not to make women more like men, but it's to make women appreciative of men, considerate of the masculine disposition. And similarly, as men, we need to be considerate and appreciative of women and the feminine. And that's what makes us powerful as a unit, because the fact that we might see one thing differently could be a strength, especially if those two ways that we're seeing it are productive to a more three-dimensional, long-term vision of a thing and how to approach and capitalize on the thing. But to round it up, I think this inspires a pretty interesting conversation about relationships, about marriage, about society, entertainment, comparison. Like I said, male sadomasochism, women liking projects. I think the lesson here is, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, but also develop the ability to be critical in your analysis, not just of others, but of yourself, not just of other people's manicured highlight reels, but also how these things do or don't apply in real life on the macro.
What happened to men who were supposed to be responsible? Do you know that it's our job to take care of a woman and some children, to have a family? That's our damn job.
But what happens to when the woman tell you, I don't need a man, Steve?
Well, they need to what? Okay, if you don't, how that's working? You know, how that's working? Who don't need no man?
I'm independent, I can do for myself.
Yeah, but why do you want to? Yeah, okay, you can drop a transmission. You can sandblast your house. But hell, do you want to?
No.
If somebody could get out there and drop this transmission for you and sandblast your house, why don't you go get your nails done? I'm not trying to reduce a woman to nothing else. Be all you can be. But damn, who don't need a man? That's a lie. What man don't need a woman? Aristotle Onassis said it best. He said, if women did not exist, all the money in the world would have no meaning. Dog, women is everything. They the catch me out, they the lick, man. But these young boys done forgot it, because these women out here, they've had to be independent because they ain't got the right man.
Okay.
One time this group came after me because I said Marjorie belonged to me.
And they said she's not a possession, she's a person, she's a human.
She is, she mine. What is you talking about? She belonged to me, but I got news for you, I'm hers. I belong to her. See, if you don't like that system, carry your punk ass on. Go do something else and let me know how they work out for you. I want to belong to somebody.
Right.
I want somebody to belong to me.